Hey, good morning everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I wanted to do another live video where I'm recording everything all at once. I wanted to show you my process for warming up, kind of what I do every morning when I wake up and how I warm up for the day. For those who don't know, I'm a full-time senior concept artist for Stoke Games. And so essentially what I do all day is design, paint, and draw all day, doing visual development. So I try to start my day with a series of exercises to kind of warm up my wrist, warm up my artistic juices, my hand-eye coordination. So what I like to do is a series of gestures. I do a figure drawing session where I start off with really short gestures, anywhere from like 15 to 30 seconds, and then I do a series of 1-minute gestures, 2-minute gestures, and I work my way up to like 5 to 7-minute gestures. So I wanted to show you how I approach that. Also, just the exercises that I do before I dive into those gestures. I like to just like fill up my page with a series of circles to kind of warm up my wrist and shoulder. You might notice that I'm drawing with my shoulder here, which kind of allows me to get these really smooth lines. And if I slow down, I can get a fairly accurate circle. And that's because I'm using my shoulder instead of my wrist. And I'm just using that rotation. It's definitely a lot more stable and controlled than if I were to do this and just draw with my wrist. After I do that, I like to do kind of these slinky shapes. It's almost like drawing a slinky in 3D space. Helps warm me up for drawing ellipses. It kind of gets my mind to think more in 3D space on this 2D surface. I think this is actually an exercise that I learned from Fing Zhu from one of his YouTube videos. Definitely recommend his content as well. It's great stuff. So after I do those, I'll just start filling up the page with kind of basic 2D geometric shapes. Here I'm just drawing a series of triangles. Not trying to be too accurate. Again, the idea is just to kind of loosen up. I'll draw some squares. It's nice to, when you're drawing these shapes, to do a series of like big, medium, small. So you're always kind of thinking of those basic design principles. For those who don't know, one of the best fundamental design principles is that of big, medium, small. Usually when you have those shapes together, those proportions, it really allows your eye to kind of travel from the big form to the medium form to the small form. If you just have kind of 3 of the same, it's a lot more static, and your eye doesn't really travel from shape to shape as smoothly. And really that's what design is it's using those design tools to help guide the eye of your viewer where you want your viewer to go, to pull them to your focal point, which is the most important part of the image. After I do that, oh yeah, I'll draw like a series of ellipses, and then I try to almost break them up like I'm cutting up a pizza into a bunch of slices. And this kind of helps me to think of these ellipses more in 3D space. So yeah, this really is a great exercise to get more comfortable with drawing ellipses, which honestly is one of the more difficult shapes to draw in perspective, especially when you're drawing wheels in perspective. My gosh, that is definitely one of the more difficult things to do. And this is something you want to practice a lot, particularly if you're an industrial designer or you're a hard surface designer and you design a lot of vehicles. You want to get really good at drawing those ellipses. Of course, there's tools. There's little plugins that you can download in your Photoshop to help you draw ellipses, but I like training myself to do it traditionally in addition to having those tools. Okay, so after those exercises, I guess one more exercise that I like to do is drawing three-dimensional shapes. So here I'll just draw a box. I guess this would be more like a shoe box. Again, I'm not spending too much time. It's nice to kind of draw through the box. It's almost like you're drawing kind of a wireframe if you were to build this in 3D. And the purpose of this is really to train your brain to approach the 2D surface of your canvas as if you were drawing and sculpting in three-dimensional space. I think that's one of the biggest things that separate novice draftsmen from senior, veteran, seasoned draftsmen. So, that's why so many different artists make those suggestions of, hey, you should start with drawing boxes and lighting boxes and basic three-dimensional shapes, is because it helps you break through that initial barrier and threshold. And if you want, you can add a little bit of value. Here I'm just going to do a sphere. Again, just kind of building the wireframe. If you want to be ambitious, you can kind of do rough lighting, do some cast shadows. Just pretending the sphere is sitting on top of this box. And we can draw a cone. One book that talks about this and articulates this thought process really well is How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. It's an oldie but goldie, written by Stan Lee and Buscema. He assisted Stan Lee in a lot of the illustrations in that book. But it has fantastic notes on perspective, drawing in three-dimensional space, drawing in perspective, going over like 1 point, 2 point, 3 point perspective, and then lots of tips on how to pose figures and how to draw them in perspective, and even facial expressions. So I think you can get on Amazon for really cheap. Paperback copies really, I think it's like $9 or something like that. But definitely worth it. I'll just do another sphere just for fun. Or maybe we'll do the wireframe from a different perspective. Okay, now that we're warmed up, done those exercises, we're going to jump into some 30-second gestures. I put the quantity up to 5. For those who want to know, I'm using the website Bodies in Motion. It's a great resource for figure drawing reference. They do have a quick draw feature where you can select different durations for timed gestures, anywhere from like 15 seconds all the way up to 20 minutes. So we're going to do 30 seconds, and we're going to do 5 gestures here. And again, these are not expected to be beautiful drawings by any means, or even necessarily super accurate. The main focus of these really short gestures is to loosen us up, and hopefully to help us focus more on the broad strokes and the broad rhythms. So here we go. So you can see I'm just really focusing on those rhythms in the figure and the basic directions. So I really don't have time for anything else. I see at the shoulder line, gesture of the arms. His arms are crossing. I can find the torso. This one he was kind of crouching, so his arms are stretched out, kind of doing the okay, I didn't get too far on that one. Okay, so that was it for the 30-second gestures. We just did 5. Usually I like to do 10, but we're going to move on to the minute-long gestures. So again, I'm going to put these together just so you can kind of see where I got. That one was probably the least successful. In fact, we'll just delete that one. So there you go. Those were 30-second gestures. I just wanted to talk about these for a brief second before we move on. So with these 30-second gestures, really, all I'm focusing on is like finding maybe the shoulder line, the midline of the torso, just doing a simple oval egg shape for the rib cage, like a flattened circle for the pelvis, more of an oval shape for the head, and sometimes just like a circle if I'm just blocking in the mass of the cranium. Again, here I'm getting that C curve of the torso. Here's the C curve again. There's the C curve there. And with the limbs, I'm being very, very abstract. At the very most, I'm just getting like a simple tapered form, and at the least, it's almost just a single line that kind of represents the overall flow and gesture of the limb. So yeah, that's what I would suggest with those 30-second gestures. And again, the purpose is just to loosen up and to help you focus more on those broad strokes and shapes, to give you a more holistic perspective on what you're looking at. All right, well, let's move on to the 1-minute poses. So again, these are just have 5 1-minute gestures we're doing here. When I'm doing these gestures, I usually start off with blocking in the cranium, and then the gesture of the neck, and then pelvis. And we're just getting in the general direction of the arms. And the legs. Okay, I think this is the last 1 minute. Alright, there we go. So again, with all of these gestures, I'm just going to put them side by side so you can see what I was focusing on. I mean, none of these really have any detail. It really is just focusing on those main rhythms and movement. But this will give you a really good foundation, to build off of. Because once you have that kind of initial blueprint laid in, then it's so much easier to then go back and add all the anatomy, the anatomical landmarks, the shading and lighting, all that. But you want to make sure the foundation is good. So that's why practicing these quick gestures is really important. And again, it's also to just help you loosen up. So I wanted to finish this YouTube video with a series of three 3-minute gestures, and then I think we're going to call it. The purpose of this video really was just to show you my process for warming up and getting loose in the mornings. So let's dive right in. I'll try to show you the reference on these, so you guys can follow along if you want. So again, just start off with a kind of a softer line. I'm just focusing on getting the shoulder line, C curve of the pelvis. Just kind of block in the gesture of the rib cage. And now the pelvis. Just these really loose lines for the arms, the limbs. As I do that, I can kind of find the pit of the neck. Then I'll get the chest. Find the clavicle, gesture of the clavicles. Now I'm going to get the gesture you love. Yes. Getting the gesture of the legs. Hey, baby. My wife and my daughter just walked in. Probably hear my daughter. She's excited to be here.
I bumped my head.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so cute. Our daughter is 2.5 and she's really starting to learn how to talk now, so it's pretty exciting. She says really funny things. So again, I'm still kind of just focusing on just the gesture here and not getting too involved with the rendering. So all right, we'll move on to the next one. There's pose number 2. So you'll notice even with the hands, I'm just doing just a suggestion of its gesture, just with a quick line, not focusing on detail at all. get quite as far on this one. But even though I didn't get all the details in there, I got the gist of the movement of the pose, which really is the most important thing when you're doing a gesture anyway. So yeah, we'll move on to the next one. So I want to point out before we move on to the next pose, again, just like how graphic I'm making those initial shapes, and I'm putting them in with a very light, softer line, so I can then go back over and start carving out the shapes with more confidence. I kind of like describing it that way, carving out the shapes. Because when I understand, as my understanding of anatomy and of the three-dimensional forms gets a little better, when I'm doing these darker, more confident lines, I can actually kind of feel my my line wrapping around the three-dimensional form, almost like I'm carving out those shapes. So anyway, yeah, I think we got a good foundation on this one. And one thing I like to do too is kind of do a connection line on the ground plane between the 2 feet, just so I kind of have an idea of their relationship to one another. Sometimes that really helps me to plant the figure on the ground, because if you get those relationships wrong in regards to the perspective and where they are in relationship to each other, it will usually make the figure feel like it's floating. So that's a nice technique, is just drawing a connection line between the 2 feet. And then I like to do an ellipse to kind of show the tilt or perspective of the floor. And I think it adds some nice energy to the sketch too. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, here we go with pose 3. Find the clavicles. Blocking the breasts. Definitely spent more time on the torso on this guy, on this figure. So I'm about out of time. Anyway, I will stop there. So that was pose number 3. Again, didn't have time to get everything in, but I was just trying to block in the main gesture, the large primary shapes. One thing I like to do sometimes, even when I'm done with the sketch, is just kind of go back in and find the tilt of the eye line, the breast line, and of the pelvis. It kind of shows off the perspective a little better. Just adding a few more details. Sometimes if you don't really have time to draw the face, if you just do like a little black dot under the nose, give you like a hint of where the nose should be, that it can add a lot to your gesture. These little dark accents. Yeah, I think I should probably stop. Just do an indication of the eye line. Alright, well I think that is it for these ones. I'm just going to save this just in case. As we did previously with the other images, the other gestures, I'm going to put these side by side so we can kind of see what we did. Make them a little bit darker. All right, there we are. There's our 3-minute gestures. Again, even at this point, we're just focusing on the broad strokes. Still just trying to loosen up. And I really think by pushing yourself to do these loose sketches to warm up, your long sustain gestures and figure drawings are going to be so much better, including, I would say, your illustration work, concept work. It definitely helps me to do these exercises in the morning, so I strongly recommend it. Anyways, I want to thank you guys for staying tuned this long, and hopefully you learned something. And as promised, I'm going to try to do one of these videos once a week. Also, just so you know, I'm working on the shading tutorial, and I'm hoping to get that out in the next couple days, if not this weekend. So hopefully you guys can check that out too. All right, well, thanks again for everything, and we'll see you next time.